A generational gap in performance against NVIDIA.
You're not being scammed by AMD's Ryzen 9 7950X3D CPU.
i9 13900KS is about the same price. It'll lose in gaming by like 20-30%.
Something wrong, Mr. Ventura? Of course not. This is a lovely room of
Denial. The Ryzen 9 7950X. AMD says this is the fastest gaming CPU. Let's put it to the test. Okay, so for this video, we're going to focus mostly on the maximum performance of this CPU. There's a bit of drama online over what people's definitions of usable and unusable are for this CPU. Let me just tell you that this CPU in its stock configuration is 100% a scam. 100%. Now, you could debate that. You could not debate that. Whatever. What I'm saying is, if you sold this CPU to your grandmother, she's going to have issues with it. And she's going to call you every week asking why her performance is so bad and variable. So with that being said, for now, let's put aside the drivers, put aside the whitelist, put aside all the Affinity, Game Bar, core parking. If you want to test it yourself, go buy it, and you're going to find out. So when it comes to the maximum performance of this CPU, you basically turn off the other CCD. So actually, this is a 7800X3D review, because you cannot allow Windows to take control of this CPU at all. If you want to use both CCDs, you're going to have to manually Affinity every single app yourself if you want to use this CPU the way that you think it should be intended to be used. So I disabled the non-cache CCD, I disabled the E-cores on the Intel CPU, 8 cores, fresh Windows install on both, brand new drivers, everything, apples to apples comparison. Comparing schedulers and how they function against each other will be a different video. Okay, so let's get into the test setups of all these systems. I'm going to show you some IDA64 pictures first, and then we'll get into the good stuff. Okay, so here's the setup for the OG 7950X, locked 5.5 gigahertz all cores, and there was actually some more BIOS updates that allowed me to tighten those timings down to 53 nanoseconds. So it's actually come a long way since launch. I think at launch I was at like 58 or 59 nanoseconds, so I think we shaved off another 5 over the long haul of all those BIOS updates. And here's the Intel setup. We have a 13900KF at 5.8 gigahertz, 8200 megahertz on the RAM. Got it down to about 49 nanoseconds. All right, so this is the stock 3D configuration here with just using 6000 XMP, right? And it's around 70 nanoseconds. Now, the read speed, I don't know why it's doing that. Probably because we have the one CCD disabled, I'm assuming, but I'm not too sure. It could just be a bug with IDA as well, since this is such a new CPU as well. But that doesn't really matter. Just pay attention to the latency for this one. And unfortunately, on this one, I did not get a God bin like I did last time. This one maxed out at 6200 memory speed and 2066 fabric. But we gotta leave it up to the cache to do the heavy lifting now. And then for the overclocked numbers here on the 3D, we shaved off about 10 nanoseconds on the latency. And I also got the clock speed up by about 200 to 300 megahertz here. Here, I'll show you. So it looks like running the benchmark here, we're at about 477548 on the stock clock speeds here in Tomb Raider. Okay, so now we're doing Tomb Raider after the overclock, and we got 5175. So it's kind of fluctuating a little bit there. 575. 515. So anywhere, yeah, it's kind of anywhere from 5.1 to 5.2. So a 300 to 400 megahertz increase here. And in this second screen here, I guess it's less CPU intensive. So now it's doing 5.15, 5.25 almost consistently there. So now we're almost at like a 8 to 10% overclock here on the core. If I had a delitter, I might be able to get that to 5.3 or 5.4, to be honest. It's just running too hot right now. So AMD actually sold themselves short a little bit here. There's actually a lot of overclocking headroom in this CPU. And they said it was locked, right? It's not, it isn't, it's not. I would describe it more as like a different way of overclocking compared to the traditional way. Traditional, you would just lock all the cores and set all the voltage. You can't do that, right? It still has to use its boosting algorithms, but they gave us full control over those boosting algorithms. So I think that's okay. I consider that semi-unlocked. I think that's totally fine. So you can basically overvolt and crank this thing as much as you want. It really just comes down to the thermals, right? So in my BIOS, I set it to, instead of thermally throttling at 75, I changed it to 90 Celsius. And then that gave me like an extra 100 megahertz, but it basically hits 90 Celsius right away, right? Even with the custom loop. So you really do need liquid metal or a D-lid on this thing, or maybe shave off the top, like lap it. I don't know. If you want to push this thing, is what I'm saying, you really got to bring those temps down first. But that being said, does overclocking this CPU even give you any performance at all? Okay, let's go find out. But before that, this video was brought to you by the supporters of the channel. This CPU costed me 1,000 Canadian dollars, and I got scammed out of 8 cores just like everybody else that bought this thing did. But I could not have brought this unbiased review to you guys without all of the insane supporters that I have giving me money every month. Thank you for that. And if you can't afford to support, leave a comment down below thanking the people that do support me every month, because without them, I could not run this channel. So without further ado, let's go find out what is the Gaming King. Let's start off with something easy. Shadow of the Tomb Raider 1080p. Now you can see here that the 7800 X3D beats the 13900K handedly with a 13% lead in the 1% lows and an 8% lead in the averages. But the 1% lows is really all that matters for gameplay experience. So that cache is coming in clutch here with an extra 30 FPS. 1440p up next, and the margin still ends up holding with that maxed out 4090 driving all of those frames. So we got an 11% victory now for the 800 X3D. And then check out those stock results versus the max OC results. Overclocking this CPU didn't really do much over XMP in this single player title, which you could actually argue is a good thing, right? And then in 4K, all of these CPUs tie each other margin of error, so it doesn't really matter anyway. Let's move on. Horizon Zero Dawn is up next, and oof, that is brutal. That is decimation right there. Now, this game is probably the most AMD biased game I would say that you can find out there. Along with maybe Death Stranding as well. So even the OG 7950X is beating the 13900K here quite handily as well. And then 1440p, the margins shrink up a lot, but I feel like it's always valuable to include this game, even though it's so heavily biased towards one vendor, just because you can think of it as, what if every game was coded like this? It's kind of like, what is the theoretical maximum that this CPU is potentially capable of, right? And then 4K, it's pretty irrelevant, even though there is still a little bit of a lead on those 3D chips, but for the most part, your gaming experience is going to be any different. So once again, 4K, ignore GG next. Riftbreaker up next. I only did 1080p for this one since it's a RTS game, but the script has been flipped here a little bit, with Intel actually having a 13% lead in the 1% lows in this game. So even though that cache really made AMD catch up, Intel still seems to be better at kind of calculating really fast RTS style tasks. And the trend continues here with Civilization 6, where the 13900K is 15% faster than the 7800 X3D. Now, actually, if you take a look here, the 7800 X3D is slower than the OG 7950X. So this game specifically is basically purely clock speed dependent, it looks like. So this would be one of those prime scenarios where you would actually force the affinity onto that other CCD if you were actually going to play this game. So this is going to be one of those prime games to test while we're live on Twitch to see if the AMD driver will actually auto-assign this one over to that other CCD, or if it'll still just put it on the 3D cache. Now, continuing on with the RTS games, we're going to do Factorio next, with Intel having a 5% lead. Now, I already know that there's going to be alarm bells and red flags going off everywhere because every single reviewer shows the 3D chip in this game having way better performance. Well, I don't care about their numbers. These are my numbers, but what I can do is show you how I got these numbers. Okay, so here's Factorio, right? Now, this map, I just downloaded this map online. This is somebody else's game, right? So, but this was the biggest kind of Factorio map that I could find, save file that I could find, right? So basically, how I benchmark this game is I downloaded this map, and then I run a batch script here. Run with PowerShell. And then basically what I do is ticks means how many cycles you want to let the game run. So what I was doing was 100,000 cycles. And then I would do 5 runs. And then what it does is it calculates the time it takes this CPU to do 100,000 cycles of that Osira map that I was actually doing, right? So then, and then I would take the average of the 5 runs, right? So check this out. So it just finished 2 runs, right? Now, the reason why the times are lower right now, this is not the benchmarking rig. This is my 13900 KS that I'm running at 6 gigahertz. So these numbers are 6 gigahertz. The one in the benchmark is 5.8, right? That's why the times are a bit lower. But whatever. This is basically how I get the Factorio numbers, right? There's no funny business here. It literally just calculates how many seconds it takes to do 100,000 cycles of that map. Now, the thing is, the other guys might benchmark it differently. I have no idea. This is just how I do it, right? So, I don't know if there is another way of doing it or if they just don't overclock their systems. I have no idea. All I know is this is my result, okay? Alright, so Borderlands 2 is up next. Now, I only did 1080p for this one as well because the resolution doesn't matter. This game is so old. And because it's so old, it only uses one thread, literally, right? So then cache doesn't mean too much in this one. That's why I still use this one, right, for these older games. Now, the 7950X and the 7800X3D basically perform identically, and then the 13900K is about 15% faster in this title. Alright, Spider-Man is up next. Now, for this one, we set ray tracing on to high. Now, this one we know wants as much memory bandwidth as possible. And yeah, of course, Intel takes the big W here just because it has literally 8200 megahertz of DDR5, right? So there's no surprises here. 1440p is the exact same as well, and Intel takes about a 15% W here over the Ryzen CPUs. This game basically is the more memory speed you throw at it, the more FPS you get. That's basically it. And then here's the oddest results of all, right? In 4K, Intel takes the lead by 22%. So it's almost like the rays themselves are also being rendered in 4K, and then which the bandwidth of the memory matters even more, right? That's the only explanation I can think of here. But I guess if you're a heavy 4K ray tracing gamer, you're really going to want as much memory speed as humanly possible. All right, Flight Sim is up next. Now, here's another really interesting one. This is the only game out of all the ones that I've tested where overclocking the Ryzen CPU actually scaled basically linearly, right? So to the point where it was losing handedly to Intel to actually winning. Now, it's only winning by 4%, but just look at the before and after there, right? So I don't know why this game specifically, it must have crazy texture load for it to be doing this. But yeah, just super interesting results here. And then in 1440p here, Intel goes back to winning, which doesn't make any sense. It tells me that it is a texture load issue, that when the higher the resolution, the textures, and the more memory subsystem is stressed, the worse Ryzen is doing here. And then in 4K, they're the exact same because now they're actually both GPU bound with a 4090. So they're the exact same with a margin of error. But yeah, that was a super fun one to benchmark. Right before I benchmarked this game, I was going to actually put in my conclusion that there's no point in even overclocking the damn thing. But then I saw these results and I was like, okay, so maybe there are edge cases out there that really do hit the memory more than what the cache can actually handle. All right, Battlefield 2042 is up next, and the 3D does really, really well here, but still trails Intel by about 5%. Now, the real W here is that stock number, though. It's the stock 7800X3D. You have to keep in mind is only XMP with 0 tuning, and it's only 12% slower than a max OC 13900K. So if you were to buy your grandma a CPU, that would be the one that you would get her because you're only 12% off with 0 FAFOing. And then in 1440p here, now you're seeing that texture resolution problem creeping its head again, right? Now the 13900K is 25% over the stock numbers and 12% faster than the 3D numbers, right? So it seems like if you're a competitive 1440p gamer so far, it's not a good showing for the 3D chip. Not a good showing. Here's another damn problem with the CPU, though, that you're going to find in esport titles. The average FPS looks the same as the Intel counterpart. It's really the 1% lows that are killing this thing. Obviously, the AM dip. We already know about the AM dip, right? Now, next up, we're going to do Warzone, and then we actually have a big issue here, and I'll explain. Okay, so for Warzone, I'm going to show these runs back-to-back twice because there's a lot of information to unpack here. Now, right away, you can see the 7950X is completely outclassed here by the other three numbers. Even a tuned 7950X is slower than a stock 7800X3D. So we can ignore the left column for the most part. Now, when you look at the 13900K results, the average FPS isn't as high as the 3D cache ones, but the 1% lows are higher. Now, when you look at the 3D stock column, you're going to see wild fluctuations in FPS. And when you look at the 3D overclock numbers, the average FPS and the 1% lows actually aren't that much higher, a little bit. But what you're really going to notice is that there's no more fluctuations in the FPS. It's rock solid. So tuning your memory for this game is still kind of a requirement, I want to say, if you really want to get rid of all those dips. So the next thing I wanted to check was texture density, right? Because we know about the 3D cache and the dips. So then I took some more footage more in town where there was a bunch of buildings. So this footage here is the 7800X3D tuned numbers. Now this is just to the right of where we were. I just kind of run past the train tracks here and go towards the water. And then as soon as it hits some buildings and some vegetation, boom, it dips down to 150. And then here is the massive problem with this CPU. Look at the averages. It's almost what, 110, 120 FPS more. So you guys that are in the Call of Duty kind of scene, you already know where I'm going with this. And then here's footage of the 13900K kind of in the same area. I think the smallest dip that I saw here was 170, I believe. But the 1% lows don't dip down and then come back up here. That's the key difference, right? Now, it seems like the delta kind of stays the same between the run and in the gameplay. The 13900K kind of on average has about 20 FPS more in the lows than the 3D tuned chip. But that's not the point I'm trying to make here showing you this footage. The 7800X3D has a vastly cheaper platform cost, right? So we're not including, we don't care that it loses, quote unquote, in gaming, right? Here's what does matter though. Okay, I don't want to say this like breaks my heart. I don't give a shit. It's more disheartening that we are going to be going through, this is I think our third cycle of this. What cycle is that? It's the PC optimizer, COD Bro, Ocean View, false marketing cycle. Again. And this product from AMD is so good, like the 7800X3D, it offers you almost all of the performance with none of the tuning. And what's gonna happen now is you're already starting to see it.
Yo, you might be right, bro. This shit is like hella consistent, right? 1300KS is still W. Are you sure about that? Do you know what you're talking about? This is way more consistent, chat. I haven't seen a dip. Yo, you might be right, bro. This shit is... AMD is gonna be sending us 8 CPUs. They're gonna be sending me 8 CPUs on the house. The full lineup, the 7600 flat. We're kind of turning to like a news channel. They're gonna be shipping me all that product and we're gonna be putting these in builds and giving them shout outs on every build. So we're kind of turning to like a news channel. This segment is brought to you by AMD.
Nothing ever changes, man. It's like fucking clockwork on this bitch. Like, this guy discovers the new AMD cache CPU, zooms up on the FPS in the top left corner, tries to sell it to people, does not show 1% lows. And this has been a problem with AMD products since Warzone 1 launched and the 5950X, back when the Nakatomi Plaza was out, the dip was out of control, right? And yet, all the COD optimizers were still recommending AMD products. And now, AMD is seeding COD Bro optimizer builders with AMD CPUs so that they can zoom up on the FPS in the top left. So what are the two things I hate the most? COD Bro, FPS, Ocean View, false marketing, AMD Ryzen and Radeon, product description, false marketing. Now you somehow managed to combine the two things I despise the most. Congratulations, AMD, you marred a fantastic launch with a scam CPU mixed with COD Bro marketing. I don't know how you guys keep doing this. I'm actually afraid to release this video because I know there's gonna be at least 100 or 200 rats that are gonna see this and they're gonna see dollar bills light up in their eyes when they see that massive number in the top left. So this is my warning to anybody that watches this video. If you talk to a builder, PC builder, or a COD Bro optimizer, and they recommend you an AMD CPU and show you FPS in the top left corner, run. Run as fast as humanly possible. You're about to get scammed. All you need to do, you buy the 7800X3D, you buy yourself a nice 6000 C30, C28 kit, Expo, you enable the Expo, and you leave it alone. You don't need an optimizer nor a builder to do that for you. The one thing I hate on this planet the most is pieces of shit that scam other people and lie to them. And AMD and COD Bro optimizers are all three of these, okay? Anyway, sorry for getting emotional there, but as soon as I saw Paradox's tweets, I'm like, are you guys kidding me? It's like those CPUs have been out for like 12 hours and you're already seeing Ocean View FPS. Like, it's out of control, man. Out of control. Anyway, back to the actual product review, okay? The 7800X3D is a single-player killer. You got anywhere from 15 to 25% faster in the lows in single-player titles, right? But then it loses at everything else. So it's about a 10% deficit in RTS titles. It can get up to about 20% in ray tracing, and then anywhere from 10 to 15% for your large-scale shooters. Overwatch and Valorant, that's all the same shit, don't worry about that. So we're not going to discuss pricing in this video here. By the way, affiliate links down below for all these products. I will do a video in the future trying to do kind of price per dollar. We're going to include DDR4 and the cheapest motherboards imaginable to see which one wins on the price per FPS front, but for now, for this video, we're just interested in finding out the fastest. Don't forget, in this video, I am talking about the 7800X3D. Do not buy the Ryzen 9 3Ds. They're both scams. Both of them. But the 7800X3D, if you don't know how to tune anything and you have no interest in a BIOS screen, you just buy that. You just buy that. And then you're just too old to be in a BIOS screen. You want to play some Hogwarts or some Elden Ring or whatever. You throw that in, you turn on your Expo, and you just enjoy your gaming, man. Life is beautiful. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. You guys have the numbers. You can make your own decisions based on what games you play, what FPS you're after, and what platform you want to go on. And if you like the content, hit that subscribe button. Do all that YouTube SEO stuff. Like, share, subscribe. Comment down below what you thought of the max FPS of both of these CPUs. And I will see you guys very soon in the next one. Talk to you later.
A generational gap in performance against NVIDIA